And the Lord spake unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thine ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up both on thee and upon the people, and upon all thy servants. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying to Aaron, Stretch forth thine hand and thy rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments, and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, Entreat the Lord, and he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let thy people go, and they may do sacrifice unto the Lord. So here we are, Exodus 8, talking again about the plagues of Egypt. We're on plague number 2, the frogs. Now, this is the one which actually got me thinking about the plagues of Egypt, just because frogs don't sound that bad of a plague compared to, we just had water turn to blood. So 7 days you can't drink any water. That's dangerous. Whereas 7 days with frogs, not as dangerous, you would think. But it's still a plague. I mean, there was no plague of rats. Rats would have been a horrible thing because rats will attack people. Rats will try to eat you when you're asleep. Frogs are a nuisance. They will leave you alone for the most part, unless they overpopulate, like they appear to have done now. So, this is what got me thinking about it, because frogs seem more like a nuisance than an actual plague. They can be a plague, apparently. And that's what got me thinking about the whole 10 plagues and started this series. So I looked up, will frogs attack humans? And the answer is no, unless they are really threatened. And I mean really, really threatened. Frogs will bite in extreme cases. It's not their main line of defense. For the most part, they will just hop away as much as possible. You really have to have them cornered. But if they are in your bedroom and in your bedchamber and in your, kneading troughs and all this other stuff, you're going to be running into frogs repeatedly. They might attack or they might try to defend themselves, because what is you just trying to go about your daily practice? You lie down to go to sleep and there's a frog there. It might see that as an attack. Still, it's going to try to run away before it tries to bite you. And even a frog bite generally doesn't hurt, according to most sites I found. Now, some frogs, not all, do secrete poisons as a defense. Now we're getting into a little more trouble. You got these globs of poison all around the palace and all around the land of Egypt, because you got frogs all over the place and people are scaring them, and so they're leaving these secretions behind. Especially, anything which has food in it, now it potentially has this frog poison on it. And these can be nasty poisons. They can make you very sick, or they can make you very dead. It's depends on the poison and the frog. Didn't try to look up what kind of frogs these were. Bible obviously doesn't say. I could have gone to do a search of what frogs are native to Egypt and what are their properties, and I didn't. I figured if I did that, there were probably 5 or 6 different species of frogs living in Egypt. I mean, wouldn't surprise me. It's not like any place I know of only has one type of frog. There are different species of frogs, and so the idea that there are multiple types of frog in Egypt and some may be poisonous and some may not Yeah, that was a line of research I figured I'm better off not doing. And again, I'm going to assume the frogs themselves were not a threat; they're more of a nuisance, and a very horrible nuisance apparently, because Pharaoh wanted to get rid of them. Uh, this is the one where the Egyptians also called up frogs from there. So Moses goes, waves the staff over the river, frogs come out. And I'm assuming there was like a large wave of frogs because apparently there was a pause for these so the magician could do it. So I don't know, this might have been an hour of frogs coming out just repeatedly, or it might, I don't know. But apparently there's enough of a pause for the magicians to say, oh yeah, we can do the same things. And this is where things get really weird. It's like, okay, so we don't want to give the Israelites their freedom. And so our choice is, well, we have the plague of frogs. To prove that this is nothing, we're just going to make the plague worse. More frogs. It's one of those things. What was Pharaoh thinking when he said do this? Well, that's not a miracle. My magicians can make it even worse. Um, yeah, so Pharaoh obviously had some problems at this point. He wasn't thinking straight. So, just read, he called Moses in. Story doesn't end there. Moses turns around and says, okay, when do you want these frogs gone? Give me a date, because obviously you don't believe that I brought the frogs here. So tell me when you want them gone. That way you can't just say coincidence when they go away. So Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow the frogs will be in the rivers only. That wasn't 100% true. Tomorrow, the frogs that were on land just died. They didn't go away, they just died. And the land stank with the frogs. And the Egyptians piled them in heaps. Now, and the heap stunk. I didn't read that part, but that's what happened. So this is part of it. The important part of it here is how many frogs were there actually. I mean, honestly, went down south for a vacation once. There was a lizard in my hotel room. That was one too many lizards, in my opinion. But it wasn't a plague of lizards. Now, I've got a compost pile, about 6 feet by 6 feet, about 3 feet deep. It's fenced in. And by the end of fall, with all my raking and all, I can pretty much have it filled up. Dead frogs, that would be a heap, in my opinion. Would it be a heap like the Egyptians were dealing with? Or was theirs twice as big, or 3 times as big, maybe? Still, just thinking, if each household generated that many dead frogs, that's a lot of frogs. It's not wall-to-wall frogs, so it's not as bad as it could be, and that's why I say maybe it was 2 or 3 times as deep as my compost pile. In which case, we're getting closer to wall-to-wall frogs. So again, that goes back to why I originally started thinking about this. Was the frogs, compared to a lot of the other plagues, frogs doesn't seem so bad. Other than, okay, if you step on a frog, you might trip and hurt yourself. Other than that, what damage are they doing? They will fight back as best they can, which means either a bite, which isn't going to do a lot of damage, or possibly a poisonous secretion. And again, poisonous secretion, don't know the types of frogs involved, maybe not a poisonous secretion, depends on the type of frog involved. So it seems like a very minor plague compared to the others, except when you get to the point of how many frogs were there actually. And so just again, a heap of frogs. My experience with compost heaps is Still not too bad, but annoying. But maybe my compost heap isn't as big as the heaps that the Egyptians had. Um, so that is it. That's all on frogs. Like I said, that got me thinking about the other plagues. Just things we don't think of. We got about 10 verses telling about frogs and how bad they were. When you read it, the 10 verses, it doesn't really seem that bad, other than, oh, they're also in your ovens and your kneading troughs. That's the really icky part about it. Sure, got a frog in my bed, shoo it away, and they shouldn't come back unless, well, they shouldn't. That's. Are you going to wake up to see a frog next to you on your pillow next to your head, or a frog sitting on your stomach, or that would be a little irritating. Um, didn't even consider the croaking when I was thinking about this. How keep being left awake because of the sound the frogs made. Another thing, this is one of those. It just said there were frogs, and then Pharaoh said get rid of them tomorrow, and so they did. Doesn't say how many days passed before the Pharaoh said get rid of them. So this could have been even worse than I've talked about, just because they were around for so long. I don't know. So that's it. Like I said, that's the plague that got me thinking about this series, and like I said, just speculating on the amount of frogs is what got my whole mind going to let's take a closer look at some of this stuff. That's it. Have a nice day.